There's quite a few things that need to be said, actually, at this time, really. And there's a lot of contradiction coming out of MPs at the moment. I know Andrew Bridgend's been posting lots of tweets, speaking with very, very important, well-recognised academics. But then again, so are Neil Oliver and Dr. John Campbell and Tess Lowry. And, you know, I've been reading law, and there's a hell of a lot of things that Parliament have been getting wrong, and that lots of people have been getting wrong. Things, for example, like claiming tax exemption when we're doing political materials. People aren't doing it, or they're not bothering to do it. It's a lot of money when you add it up for the whole country. Like, you know, even if each person does a small bit, if they're not a big registered organisation. But then also things like sending things in the post. Royal Mail was public owned. For elections, I'm sure Andrew Bridgend will know this, you can send one communication to each of the electors. But what about petitions to Parliament? Well, if it's taxpayer owned and it's a case to Parliament that people are signing and supporting the public, there's an argument for that. And what about in the newspaper? Courts have the right to censor the newspapers, make an order so a newspaper cannot publish something, but there are things which must be published, not just road closures or other notices that councils publish. In the advertising Town and Country Planning Act, Class F, notices that are used through standing orders of either Houses of Parliament. Well, the Petitions Committee is Standing Orders 145A. 3 is the use of subpoena and summons powers to compel informations or persons. That's powers of a small tribunal, equal to a small, or like the Inquiries Act, to compel people or information. So, like in the Inquiries Act, all witnesses get immunity from newspapers and things like that. But also, what about if you haven't got any witnesses because you don't know who saw it and you have to ask people for witnesses to come forward? That's the reverse of stopping a newspaper from publishing something and compelling it. That's why we've got public notices in the newspaper, and that's why Class F, through standing orders of Parliament, petitions in the newspaper are required in order to inform the public. A lot of these things, for Andrew Bridgend to be officially declared as a candidate, it's meant to be published in at least a certain number of places. If you're running a petition with the Petitions Committee and it's published, then you've informed the public that you're doing it, you've given notice. All these things, just sloppy. The Petitions Committee have been rejecting a large number of petitions on their standards. There are no standards. No standards exist in law. And then there's this 6 month that petitions run. How did Laura do the tampon tax one for 8 months? Oh, she did it in paper or on a different website. But it's a petition to the Commons. Oh, well, we run ours for 6 months. Oh, do you? Well, there isn't. In law, can you please give me all of the legislation this Petitions Committee is running on? Oh, there isn't any. Oh, it just runs on Standing Orders 145A. Wrong. The Petitions Committee website is a digital hard drive and computer system with a website of its own that publishes to the internet. Publishes all the petitions on that committee website to the internet. That website and those petitions are digital adverts. Material is Class F through the use of the Standing Orders of Parliament themselves. What legislation is the Petitions Committee running on? Do you even know what legislation the Petitions Committee is running on? Well, we're using the 1688 Bill of Rights right to petition. They're not coming out with any more legislation. not since 1986 when that tumultuous petitioning act was withdrawn. Again, sloppy. These are meant to be professional people. I am not an academic. I can't say I've got a degree, a master's degree, a professorship. But again, Bridgend, I'm talking to very important people on the, Zoom meetings, internet, so forth. And then we've got this here, look. I had a Zoom meeting with Professor Bruce Pardee this week. He made compelling arguments that our government will use the WHO proposals, in his opinion, as cover to impose draconian measures during the next pandemic, if there is one, or climate crisis. They may, and I think when he uses the word may, we need to emphasis on that, which he's highlighting the fact that he's trying to make out that they can, if they want to, have the ability to resist the WHO directives, but they will choose not to. Well, so what Bridgend is saying is, in fact, one of his colleagues, Mr. Franchois is his name. I think it might be called Mark Franchois. Forgive me if I've not got his full name correct. One of Andrew Bridgend's colleagues, his ex-colleague from the Tory party, Franchois, he stood up in Parliament in regard when Teslari was there for the debate. And he posed the question, the exact question actually that I was wanting them to mention, but he raised a piece of legislation, not the piece I wanted them to raise, which was the 1700 Act of Settlement. He raised another one, a second piece, which basically proposed that, it basically says that we don't have to comply with the WHO, right? And he put the question to the department that deals with the WHO to say to them, look, we want a straight answer on it. Do we have to comply with the World Health Organization? Yes or no? Well, that's what Bridgend's saying here. Bridgend's saying they may have the ability to resist WHO directives. So what he's saying is we don't have to comply with them. But then he's saying, but they will choose not to resist them, right? Well, I'm sorry, but Andrew Bridgend is wrong on that, and he's misleading. The 1700 Act of Settlement goes much further than the act that Franchois raised in Parliament, which says that, Parliament is sovereign and doesn't have to comply, right, if it doesn't want to. I'm sorry, but Andrew and his colleagues in Parliament, although Andrew's not a Tory, and although Andrew's calling out the government for being corrupt, he's still in this pocket of ministers, really, who are not taking it seriously enough. Because the 1700 Act of Settlement says that the ministers and the king, forget the WHO and if Parliament is sovereign and has to comply with the WHO or not. It's actually got nothing to do with the fact, really, that Parliament don't have to comply with the WHO if they don't want to. That's what Franchois was trying to make out. The actual fact is that the MPs, including the Prime Minister and the House of Lords, cannot take those rights away from us and impose those directives on us because they've got to uphold the rights and protect them for us. Right? That means that the ministers will be breaking our law, not whether they have to comply with the WHO directives or not. It means the ministers will be breaking our law of England. And as I've been discovering through the election petition rules and through the Representations of the People Act, you might as well line up behind Lord Anningfield. And I'm not saying line up in the Crown Court at Southwark either, where, he'll say that he's got exclusive cognizance. MPs can be prosecuted in law at High Court and most definitely in Supreme Court. There were multiple election fraud offences. It did say that they couldn't be prosecuted at common law, and there was only a fine, but it's been added into there now that they can be imprisoned, also lose their right to vote in elections or stand in Parliament again. I actually thought that John Bercow had been banned from Parliament, but he seems he's getting back into politics now. I'm going to send this to Bercow and his email address, because Bridgend's still trying to be coy. And, you know, I support the party and I don't dislike Bridgend, but there's no point calling out and using this language against, you know, the government are corrupt, or the government are going to do this, or the government are going to do that. If you are yourself not going to put your hand up and hold it out to be smacked by the headmaster yourself, theoretically, or, you know, symbolically, because Bridgend is still trying to be evasive himself, and there's no point calling out a corrupt government if you yourself are going to be corrupt, right? They can be prosecuted, and we're not talking about Boris Johnson just standing down and getting a smack on the hand from the Privileges Committee. We're talking about prosecutions. MPs and Lords can be prosecuted for election fraud in the right court at the right level, and for multiple other offences as well. Now, the right to petition bill, I've been reading it and I've been understanding it more and more and more and more. All of the clauses, how it's laid out as a document, how they dissolved the Court of High Commission, you know, high-ranking priests were getting prosecuted and so forth. They got rid of the High Royal Court of Commission. These are the people who were getting their ears cut off, by the way, just for writing certain religious books and so forth. They were petitioning the Star Chamber from the Royal Court of Commission, and then their wives eventually petitioned for their release to the House of Commons. Now, you can't do that now because of that 1700 Act of Settlement. That 1700 Act of Settlement says that if you've been convicted by Parliament, you can't get a pardon or you can't appeal because you've already appealed to the highest level. It's actually questionable, you know, whether that 1700 Act of Settlement is against the law. If it's the right of, you know, if it's the right to petition the king and all prosecutions and commitments are illegal, then you can't be held to any commitment for doing it again, you know, or for doing it multiple times, or for appealing again. But apparently, the 1700 Act of Settlement is important because of that. The MPs don't want to raise that because that clause in there saying that prosecutions by Parliament are you can't appeal them. They can't be pardoned. Now the thing is that when you're in the Supreme Court, if you work your way all the way up to the Supreme Court and you get convicted, it isn't Parliament though, is it? The Supreme Court isn't Parliament. It's got three lords in it, if there's three lords sitting in the court case, but it's called the Supreme Court. It isn't called the House of Lords, and it isn't the House of Commons, right? Now, I really want Andrew Bridgend to find out. He's got access to all of the libraries and informations of Parliament and the National Archives. We want to know through what process internally did John Pym in the Long Parliament, when Henry Burton and John Bastwick's wives petitioned for their release from prison to the House of Commons even though they're being convicted by the Star Chamber. By which process was it authorised? Did the Parliament vote on it and then ask the Lords to make an order to release them, please? Or was it by a committee? I want to know. And I want to know by what law they're saying that can't be done now. Because if anyone complains or writes to the Lord Chief Justice through the Judicial Complaints Office, they can lay communications to the House of Commons and open up communication about a legal case. It can be opened up about a legal case to petitions committees. That means you can give directions. When you petition, you're giving directions, and it's by provision in law of the enactment you're using, like criminal procedure rules, civil procedure rules. Oh, look, the right to petition the House of Commons. It's a small tribunal. They can refer matters to the courts, like the Inquiries Act, refer a matter to the High Court. Oh, well, it's the Lord Chief Justice. I'll write to them, petition the Lord Chief Justice. Oh, I've got a matter that you need to open up communications to the House of Commons, please, because I've got a petition with them. This is it. There's also the Privy Council, which has a judicial court as part of the Privy Council and function. The King's Privy Council has a court. That's not Supreme Court. That's another court. Who says you can't petition the King, the Privy Council? No one says you can't do that. You've got the right to do that as well. So the illusion that you pull the Appeal Jurisdiction Act and then you can't petition the Lords, well, that's the House of Lords. That's not the Privy Council, is it? Or the House of Commons. What they're messing around with us, really. Now, the thing about the Appeal Jurisdiction Act was that you petition the House of Lords for an appeal with a prayer and through a petition, simply. That was how simple it was. Gordon Brown clearly didn't like that. It would be very rare that you would be petitioning the House of Lords anyway, unless you want to appeal something. What is there to appeal? You would have thought the most serious things were people who were in prison. Who would want to get out. But then again, look at all these business people and people winning lawsuits to do with civil cases and companies. God knows what Baroness Moan and so forth fidgeting around in the House of Lords with their money and their big yachts and empires if you can appeal to the Lords. But we're talking about... that's for a civil case, you can still appeal to the Lords. But for criminal, which is more important... The MPs and Lords really don't like it because it can't be pardoned or appealed. Actually, Lord Hanningfield did spend time in prison, didn't he? I don't know why he didn't appeal to his Lords. There's something in the fact that they provide a priest. You can get a priest in a police station. You can request one. There is facilitated priests and holy people provided through all of the probation prison services. You can see a priest when you're in prison. Now, the thing about the Appeal Jurisdiction Act, it's based on faith in the national religion because it's by prayer and petition. So if you're in prison, and this is just theory, that act's been repealed now, but I'm just wanting to set out the theory. If you were a believer, if you truly believed, in forgiveness and, if you believe in the Lord God, you will be saved. I'm taking this quite seriously now, right? Let's say if you're a believer and you believe, in forgiveness and, if you believe in the Lord God, you will be saved, and down that line of religious pursuit. If you're in prison and you get to see a priest and then you repent and you seek forgiveness and you demonstrate that to the priest, you could convince the priest to help with your prayer to the House of Lords and petition for your release. You could probably suggest that, offer to join the clergy and become a priest yourself. There was... If you're into law and into the religion of the country, I'm not talking about, blagging or lying or I'm talking about absolute pure religious faith in God, right? There was a line, an avenue there. potentially. And this really, if you think of the High Court of Commission, Henry Burton nearly ended up as the Archbishop of Canterbury. He was in those lines of, he was on those avenues, but he didn't get it. And he ended up doing certain writing which was contesting the main religions, and actually ended up getting prosecuted in the High Court of Commission, the highest church court, which was formed at the King's leisure. Then he petitioned to the Star Chamber, and then they ended up getting imprisoned, him and Baswick as well, on separate occasions, and they ended up getting their ears actually cut off. They actually cut their ears off. They cut them off, their ears, as punishment. Now, that court was disbanded in the Bill of Rights as part of the thing, because they were persecuting religious people just for petitioning. Some of them were actually members of courts. They had church courts as well in Scotland. Some of them actually were judges in courts. Some of these priests actually, had powers, for court as well. But they were getting called to the High Commission because they were opposing the religion. So, and in that Bill of Rights, it gives us the right to petition the government without fear of being prosecuted. Clearly, any of the activities that requires, like meetings in private, talking, free speech is covered in there. Right to bear arms for defence as well. Because if you're a minority petitioning a majority, you might end up getting attacked. So, right to bear arms for defence. Never mind getting your ears cut off by the court. You potentially threat from other people who support another religion if they get angry enough and they're armed. This is the thing. That Bill, 1688 Bill of Rights, is still in force. The main factors of that bill, which I don't think Andrew Bridgend fully appreciates, is that the bill actually is not just protecting certain peoples and giving people's rights. It is pointing out and indicating who it is likely to be breaking those rights, who are the perpetrators, who is breaking the law against you if your rights aren't upheld, and it makes it criminal. It is the ministers of the Parliament of England, the councillors of the councils, and the judges in the judiciary. 3 named positions: parliamentary ministers, councillors in council, and the judges, the judiciary. These are the people who might deny your rights, and it renders them evil and criminal. And when they deny your rights, it says that it's illegal and unlawful, right? And this is the part that Bridgend, I think, is not taken seriously enough. And the reason is that if he can either carry on calling out the rest of Parliament and saying, oh, they're terrible, they're going to take away our rights, and so forth. But he's not saying that they're criminals and they can be prosecuted, because Bridgend can be prosecuted. And the thing is, he needs to make a decision whether or not he is going to protect our rights against evil ministers, or whether he is going to be one. Now, in the Civil War, people who supported the parliamentarians were not prosecuted by Cromwell, right? Because they helped. Now, if Bridgend continues to protect the ministers and himself by lying and evading their liability, criminal liability for not upholding our rights, and pretending that they can take our rights, as he's written on his Twitter, should they want to, should they choose to. Oh, now we've notched one little notch on the cog We've notched a tick on the hand clock, a chime of Big Ben. We've notched one notch around the cogs, clicked into place. Oh, according to franchise, yes or no? Oh, well, actually, no, the WHO can't override our rights. But if the ministers want to follow those directives, they can enforce them. Wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. They are criminally overriding statute rights that are protected, which Rishi Sunak does not have the lawful right to toy with. Rishi Sunak does not have the lawful right to cut and paste them, to chisel them away into crumbs with his locking on and with his policing bill, trying to chisel and shape away the rights till there's nothing left of them. No, he doesn't. Rishi Sunak doesn't have that right. And half of the... Because this is when we get in that act of settlement that I've raised the points of. It's not pointing the finger at us, actually. It's not pointing the finger at the World Health Organization. We've now established that the World Health Organization can't override our rights, but the claim now is that, oh, well, MPs can go along with it if they want it and force it on us. No, they can't. Not through the right to petition, anyway, at least. They can't make any rights that would prevent... They can't use any powers in this country that would prevent us from going around collecting signatures to oppose anything they're doing. Now, they might attempt to do something like say, oh, well, we'll still let you do it, but you've got to do it online. You know, you can't leave your house. You've got to do it on the internet. But then what happens if the websites go down or the electric power station goes down, right? Then they say that, oh, you can't walk out of your house to get signatures. What they're trying to do is they're trying to nip it in the bud. They're trying to use acupuncture. They're just still trying to do it. You know, oh, you can petition in the streets, but you can't lock onto anything. You know, well, what's that guy doing there with his bicycle? He's just locked it onto something. But what's he doing sat on his bicycle, locking his feet onto the pedals? It's just... I wouldn't mind, but like I said at the outset of this, the Petitioners Committee have been offering no support at all for casework to that committee. They've not been backing us up with Facebook pages. They've not been backing us up with YouTube channels. They've not been backing us up with emails. Or what email? Share this petition by email. Here are directions from the Petitions Committee of Parliament, supported by Standing Orders 145A 3 powers. Class F, share this, share it. Well, it's been taken down. Well, you know, we need to put him back up again. Excuse me, Petitions Committee, can you do something, please? You asked me to share this on Facebook. They've taken it down. You need to tell them to put it back up again. Oh, no, we don't do things like that. Well, can you give me a freedom of information then? Oh, yeah, we can do that. Do you give me freedom of information? Can you tell me what legislation this committee is running on? Standing Orders 145. All right, that's interesting because those are standing orders which use powers to compel my evidence to the public. Oh, look, it's the Inquiries Act. All witnesses receive immunity for purposes of protection from the press. Oh, that's interesting. Using court powers to stop the press from doing something. It's a bit like an ASBO or something. Can you do that? Well, apparently so, yes. It's a major function. We need to do that. Oh, well, what about, does the button have another direction? To me, to you, to me, to you. Press off, press on, press off, press on, press off, press on. Oh, look, it could turn the newspapers on and off, you know? You know, anyone would think they're public owned, like the Royal Mail. Oh, look, Andrew Bridgend. He can send a free letter to all of his, he's a candidate. He can send a free letter through Royal Mail to all of his electorate, one free letter. public owned. It's Royal Mail. It's a newspaper. It's got a public notices section. Oh, look, a required notice from the local council that A1 is closed for 3 weeks. We're not publishing it. Well, you'll have to. How's that? Because it's for an order from the council. Give notice to the public. Well, how are you going to enforce that? Well, how does the court enforce anything? Oh, look, it's the Inquiries Act. Look, compelling the newspapers. Oh, look, can you put that newspaper advert back up, please? I need to officially declare myself as the candidate for the Tory party, or even Reclaim. You know, well, that's funny. I'm officially declaring myself as investigating a petition campaign to Parliament, and I need to gather evidence from the public that they support the petition campaign. It's an appeal. I'm appealing to people. Do you support this campaign? Yes. See, look at this evidence I'm gathering. Now we can have an inquiry. Now we can have a debate in Parliament with present the evidence. You know, this is it. Are they using these powers? No, they're not. This is why I'm complaining to the Judicial Conduct's Office, who also governs tribunals and committees. Although they'll be saying, oh, Parliament's not under the jurisdiction. Well, when the Lord Chief Justice is in the head of the Judicial Conduct's Office and they open up communications to the House of Commons through Section 5 of the Constitutional Reform Act, then they are discussing with the Petitions Committee about legal matters to do with running petition campaigns, particularly if you've been prosecuted unlawfully. When you can't be prosecuted, or not at least through the magistrates' courts of England, seeing though that it's a case to Parliament, you know, oh, it's Andrew Bridgend. There's some election fraud going on here. Oh, you have to prosecute it at the High Court. It's election to Parliament of England. That's funny. I've got a petition registered to Parliament as well, you know. I wouldn't mind that being prosecuted in the High Court as well, seeing though that, you know, it's out of jurisdiction of the magistrates' court. This is it. And this is it. I mean, and getting back onto the point of, you know, trying to pull all this back to what Bridgend is talking about, actually, in his dialogue. So Bridgend is actually, what is Bridgend saying here? He's talking about corrupt governments. He's talking about viruses. He's talking about pandemics. He's talking about all these things to do with government, and it's quite sinister and quite serious. Yet he's a member of this Parliament, and he follows their rules and obeys them like a good little boy. Yet he's saying that they're not legitimate and they're not to be trusted. You know. And then he's saying that, you know, there are lots of strange deaths from multiple different things. Well, I've got something to say about that as well, which is actually the reason why I started talking in the first place. And that is this, right? Bridgend is kind of concurring or admitting that there's something not quite right here. That there is something unusual going on. He can't quite say whose fault it is, or that it's intentional, or someone did it on purpose, but it's strange, it's odd, and the consequences of it are worrying. People are dying for multiple reasons. I'd like to suggest this to Bridgend, and this is my final point, because I've had to record this in 3 parts because my memory card keeps filling up, and that even took me 30 seconds to say as well. This is what I want to say to Bridgend, right? He just put a comment about, you know, having a nice breakfast or something. I'm at home here and I'm desperately trying to lose weight, or I'm going to go diabetic again. And my parents keep bringing food into the house and I can't get away from it while I'm still living with them in the house. I even try not to buy things myself. It's impossible to get away from it. They're like kind of pushing it on me. It's like a habit. It's like a trance. Most people in the world, I mean, you can walk up to anyone in the street and say, "Excuse me, can I get your attention? Do you have the time, please?" and they hear the words that you speak. They respond to you. You're not like Patrick Swayze in Ghost, where no one can see you and no one, can hear you, and you can just use your gut to, make a cup pop or a Coke can fall off a wall or something. It's like, but do people really hear you? Do people really understand you? I talked to Jonathan N. Fuller quite a lot, who's highly prolific in Extinction Rebellion causes. He's an educated man. He reads the newspaper. He reads every single letter and every single word in the newspaper. He knows what they're talking about. He knows what they're referring to, this and that. But when I try and explain law to him and explain the legislation, it's like, doo! It just goes over the top of his head. And I don't think that he understands it. I don't think that he understands the law, or he doesn't care. He's more interested in the climate degrees and so forth. Some people just don't want to listen, or you can't get through to them. I'm listening to Bridgend. I'm reading what Bridgend says, and I'm digesting it, and I'm translating it, and I'm understanding it, and I want to listen to it, but they don't seem to listen to us. They don't seem to, it doesn't seem to sink in, or they're too busy with their Professor Tim Wilsons, or with their Neil Olivers, or with their Russell Brands, or with their Dr. John Campbells. They don't seem to have the attention span unless it's some sort of Zoom meeting with Dr. Tess Lowry. The fact is this, right? I do not think it is a coincidence or a random fluke that we've got the entire history of the British Empire with India, with the tea, with China, with heroin, with bombing China and cannonballing China to make them buy heroin. All these things, right? I am sorry, but why, something happened with the concept and idea of getting Chinese people to come to England and open a local takeaway in every village. And the type of food they were selling them, they got them onto these sugary, plum saucy things, and also the Indian takeaways. There's a model to it. There's a network to it. It's almost like having an embassy. You have an embassy. There's an embassy in London. You've got immunity. There's an embassy in Canada. It is like having an embassy. Like when you've got an embassy, like Julian Assange was in an embassy, for protection. But like a country, an embassy of a country. It's almost like every single village in England, every single town in England ended up with like a Chinese embassy in there. But what you don't go in there, for retreat or to make relations. You go in there to buy food and fill with food, and not actually very healthy food. It's sugary, greasy foods. There's a strategy. There's a plan. If you get a map out and put the dots on the map, put the pins in the map where they all are, every single village. I can remember going down the A1, it's Long Bennington, pull over, they got the Chinese restaurant, and then we're in Scotland, there's Scottish, battered, you might say, well, what about fish and chip shops, a battered haggis or whatever, deep fried haggis. Yeah, true, but there's something about it. There's something not right about it. This feeding. And the thing is, I had a few Chinese friends, actually. I used to do sports with a Chinese guy, and I got on with him. He was really cool, actually. I really liked him. He was a good friend from Birmingham. But other than that, fewer instances. The only time that you really interacted with Chinese people was when you went to a takeaway. And to be honest, I can't say that they ever, they used to go into the back, and a lot of them used to get English people sat in the front at the counter or the till to talk with you. Not all of them, but some of them. And then there wasn't this kind of like rapport. That there was something about they kind of kept themselves to themselves. This is how you interact with Chinese people, and I think with Asian takeaways it was different. They were a bit more outgoing and wanting to get friendly with people, but still, for a long time, all through the 1970s, there was a lot of Asian people opening corner shops, and I think one of the bus drivers said that a lot of English people didn't want to work long shifts and didn't want to work in the factories and do a lot of overtime. So he said there was an initiative to bring people over to work in the factories, particularly places like, funnily enough, Blackburn, and in Yorkshire and Batley and places like that. There's something to all this. And I know that, Tice and Farage are more onto that kind of area of inclination, leaving Europe and, jobs for, English people and so forth. But I can, there is I call it a military, imperial strategy behind it. And it's almost on the lines of, tea trade, tea importation, India, Rishi Sunak, big empire, family deals. They've got in one of the Doctor Who's, one of the episodes, they're breaking all the families up in India and there's all these invaders coming in, and then, they separate, they carving the country into pieces or whatever. And then the whole thing with the British Empire, bombing the Chinese, cannoning the Chinese, and with all that, it's with the heroin, with the opium, it's a subject and topic within that sphere of inquiry. I'll say that. And something happened in 2011 or 12 when David Cameron was still Prime Minister. Suddenly, I didn't even know about it at first, but I started going to a couple of parties and people were on that methcaffeine and stuff, right? And I'm like, oh, what's this, right? And everyone's on it. And all the teenagers all over the place are using it. And, it must have been... I didn't, it gradually kind of snuck in, and then everyone's on it, and it was lawful, legal, and there were loads of versions of it, and, at that point, people were just buying it through mail order, and then Cameron called it Maximus Murphyful, we better make this illegal. But how did it get to that stage? How did it get to the stage where people were even doing it? No, the government knew about it before. Someone had done a deal with China. I don't think it was like, it wasn't, COVID leaks from a China lab. It was, methadone leaks from a China lab, and everyone's buying it in mail order. What it did that is it absolutely pummeled and caned people's metabolism, like caning it, bread. These breads have been put in, did it, and all these Chinese meals and Indian meals were caning us. But if you really want to accelerate that, speed it up, this is going well, everyone's getting cancer and diabetic and getting ill, we're all dying off, and by the time they get old age, their family don't want to see them and they put them in a home. It's like a slow genocide. If you want to change the stick shift and put it into the next gear, if it's going along nice and well, this is going well, If you want to, up it, put the pedal to the metal, speed it up a bit, oh, this is going well. How can we cane them faster? How can we get them quicker? Then you will have a methadone leak from China. Bang, boom. That's caused a lot of medical things, and I don't think John Campbell's taking it seriously, the widespread effects that's had on everyone. And then when they get hit by, COVID outbreak, so, and now we're apparently, John Campbell's saying they're doing these experiments on viruses that infect people's brains. And he says that it's rather concerning and worrying. We're getting broadsided and pummeled from all sides. And the main premise of carrying on as normal is that who would do such a thing? Who would intentionally plan or plot or strategize such a thing? Isn't everyone nice? Oh, hello, sir. I tip my hat to you. It's Andrew Bridgend MP and my constituents. Yes, everyone's happy and roses and smiling. But the thing that Bridgend needs to understand is a Chinese meal and a big Indian meal is not all happy and smiley and roses and a good thing. It's not a good thing. This is the thing, It's almost like, when you used to go to school, like slap your hand with a ruler. Oh, it's okay, just a bit of, it's like the whips in Parliament, It's just a bit of jurisdictive, bit of authority, a bit of justice, There's nothing wrong with that. No, there is something wrong with it. They banned it. We don't smack people's hands anymore. This is the thing. They used to think it was okay to smack people's hands. We used to think it was okay to cut people's ears off, In fact, they were ordering it by the king in courts. Unfortunately, I don't think that we've got completely rid of that sphere of smacking hands, of cutting ears off, I think that it's just ended up going to a more of a, like, oh, don't worry with the cows. It's okay, we're going to slaughter you all and kill you all, but don't worry, we'll just sneak up behind you and, we'll just sneak up behind you, stroke you on the head, pat you on the head. Nice cow, nice lamb. And then, boom, does he get a bolt gun down the bolt in the back of the neck or whatever? Surprise! This is it. Ooh, stroke the cows, get through the cattle grid. Don't worry, everything's going to be okay, nice and calm. That's sort of what's going on. But it's like shoveling us with food. The thing is, people get into habits and they can't break them when the things are around them. This is what my family are doing. My mum and dad, they can't stop. They're just shoveling food and then they're advertising it, promoting it. The only places you can go are these farm shops, and then it's like the butcher. It's like what it is. It's the McDonald's clown is sinister. It's not good. He's not a happy clown. He's not just going to do magic tricks and, everything's okay, get the happy meal, get the kids in. It's actually the sinister side of the food. The smiley, happy Buddha butcher isn't your friend. They're pushing these things on you that aren't healthy. They're not good. And everyone is dancing to the piper's tune. And then on TV, the younger people who aren't affected by it, who aren't getting ill, who are, are all happy, we're on top of the pops, where the presenters, Ant and Dec, who, I'm all right, Jack, have a laugh about it. And they are just continuing to pump out these things, these programs, these foods on everyone. Because they can't stop themselves, and they think that it's all right. They're all right, I like buns, and this is when we have arguments over fascism. If you stop people from doing all the things they like, are you going to be like a mini Hitler or something? But if they're getting harmed by them, you need to try and save them or stop them. And this is the whole conundrum with the church and salvation and the whole church sin model and so forth. Unfortunately, I don't think Charles is responsible enough. He's not responsible. And, the royals get looked after, with their health. And, we don't really know that we don't see the royals aren't really well known for wearing glasses, for instance. Not many of them are well known for wearing glasses. If you think of the average royal, they don't wear them. So, the whole Google thing, with the glasses and not seeing properly, that's also a joke and pun. It's no coincidence that it's ended up being the biggest company on the planet, and it's the one who's spying on everyone and the one who's getting all this data and the one that's controlling all our online activity, and people can't really see what's going on. I'm sorry, but I want to call it and I want to claim it, but I don't know who's going to investigate it, because you need evidence. But in order to understand the evidence, you need to see the big picture. You need to be able to see the big picture over time. And this is like what's happened on Doctor Who, when in the latest, Christmas specials, they sent that robot down the very, very long corridor, but very slow. You don't really know what's happening to the robot or where he's going to, but he's preoccupied doing whatever he's doing. This is it. I actually think that it's fascism in disguise. It's almost like, the Chambers, but less obvious. Because, when it's obvious, then people panic or people try. It's even worse, when no one even tried to escape or no one even tried to get out of there. I've even been looking at I noticed an act when I was looking through some of the repealed acts, and they've even got, like those incest acts. Apparently, some of the people who were building those long barrows in prehistoric Britain, some of them were like apparently saying that they were all keeping within certain families when they were having children and so forth. There could be something in that. If you make it illegal, this is the thing. This is why when we get into, why psilocybin illegal, what's been controlling the evolution of man, and then at some point is it stopped, when they're ruling out plants for playing a role in that, like, whatever plants they are, and then it makes you wonder, are these people in charge, just basically concentrating on their own evolutionary advantage? So, but even all the scientists are under control now. Everyone's under observation. Does everyone want to live in the future under observation from this, Orwell mobile phone, and the press? Bridgend's got issues to deal with, and I think he's in denial to a certain extent. I can see it. I can see the whole thing. And if you want to try and blame someone, everyone is unable to help themselves because they're put into a habit, a daily routine that is habitualized, and they're groomed into it, and then someone's controlling the planning permissions, and when you install and change the actual surroundings, the physical thing, then you can only do or go to what has been put there, and you find it hard to break out of it, like being sent around a pinball machine. And this is the whole model with the mouse maze and the rat maze. When they've put these places here, the thing is, it becomes culture, and then people like it. What else is there to do? What would you do on a Sunday? If you weren't short of money, if you could drive, what would you do? Go up to Kendal, have a walk round, buy some gifts from the gift shops, make some tax for the government, have some food, have a meal, buy some Kendal mint cake, go for a little bit walk. Oh, now we're going for some walk in the hills. Now we're doing something healthy. Back into Kendal to a restaurant, eat. Buy some more souvenirs, bring back the little trinkets and trinkets. This is the thing, you know. And now Zuckerberg doesn't even want you to do that. He just wants you to, you know, have digital trinkets and trinkets, you know, online. There's got to be some alternative to life than this pinball machine that they've made us. What the royals and the military and the imperials have done, which is, you know, they've done the handshake and agreed to, collaborated to, is build us a pinball machine. And they're the ones who are lighting up in glee, pulling back the pin and bashing the buttons and watching us fly around everywhere in glee and watching their score go up on the machine. These people, Charles watching his score go up, ding, 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 ding. Jeff Bezos, ding, 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 ding. This is the thing with Jeff Bezos. He's the guy with the buttons and controls watching his Amazon score go up while we're all flying around the pinball machine that he's designed. And he's the one getting all the fun out of it, and we're not. Well, some of us are. Some of us, like Ant and Dec, are going, wee, wee, flying around the pinball machine. But, you know, then, you know, now what's basically happening is the balls are disappearing. Strangely, mysteriously disappearing, you know, down the hole. No one knows where they go. You know, this is the thing. What's happening to these people mysteriously? That's the problem. There ain't going to be anyone left soon, or there are only going to be a certain select elite people left. It's you know, I think that they're either irresponsible or they know exactly what they're doing. This is a problem, you know. This is what, you know, what can Bridgend do about it? You know, apparently he can't do anything. He can't even... He's a member of the Parliament of England, but, you know, people don't turn up at these debates. No one turns up. There's only, like, him, Danny Krieger, whatever he's called, you know, Franchise. You know, there's only about half a dozen people turn up. The Prime Minister's popping up on weird Christmas adverts. Prime Minister just basically wants to do business and make a lot of money out of everyone. As long as he's making money and making his own pals and friends. I'm all right, Jack. In fact, I'm more than all right. You know, this is it. Something needs to be done about these people. And this is why I support Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because even if, you know, Whitney Webb is, you know, calling out RFK, at least he's talking about it and admitting it, and that's one thing, you know. Can you trust Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Well, at least he's admitting and talking about a lot of these things rather than trying to hide and conceal them, which they were trying to keep all these things off television and out of conversation. At least now they're admitting them, whether or not RFK Jr. is ultimately on our side or not. I would probably suggest that he is. I know that they have, now that people, they can't completely and totally ignore it now that people know about it and are talking about it, so at least some of them have got to admit it. So I would suggest that, you know, people like Paul Rand Paul and RFK are on the right side, but you know, do they themselves want to be liable for anything, and can they break their own habits at the end of the day? I mean, it's similar to the gun problem in America. Really, we shouldn't really have guns. I mean, the whole idea of them is wrong, but, you know, RFK has to support guns because loads of Americans like them and they won't vote for him. You know, and Americans like to hunt, you know, with them for fun, even though there's no people around out in the wilds, or even shooting tin cans or God knows what, you know. So it's culture. That's the problem with the food, really. And, you know, people, we've bred addicts, we've created addicts, and I think the government just want to, you know, I mean, I just think this military industrial thing, you know, it's made loads of money out of them, it's got loads of power out of them, and I just don't think it cares about people. Families can't help themselves at the moment. Some people can, other people can't. And then the thing is, you know, you're in a situation when you can help yourself and others, but if you end up becoming unwell yourself, then your ability to help yourself and other people falls. But also helping other people, they perceive it as that you're not helping them. When you're trying to save people from greed and excess, and trying to ban Ant and Dec's Saturday night takeaway because it's bad influence, they think you're doing a bad thing. They don't think you're doing a good thing, and then, they're your opposition. And they're in a lot more of a stronger position as an opposition because they command the airwaves, and they've got worshippers, minions. So it's maybe man is afflicted. Maybe they figured all this out before. When they said, man is born to sin. Maybe they tried it all before, even when there weren't as many bad influences as there are now. But the job of the church was to keep this all in check. The job of the church was supposed to be to save us and to use spiritual capacity to try and, shepherd with a crook, and not become the crook. And this is the big failures of the Archbishop of Canterbury. This is the big failures of Lord Spiritual. This is the big failure of the church, of Pope Francis. I mean, look at Pope Francis. He's not a chiselled model and statue of Rome, is he? The church has failed. And then what happens is they get attacked with all these, paedophile cases like Savile. They get attacked by the industry, by the newspapers, by the muses themselves, because they can't even, you need strong people to be able to help everyone. But maybe it's too late, good luck to those people who are least affected, maybe they'll just end up with the elite and be able to, Ant and Dec's last final party, Ant and Dec's final party with the scientists, the people that they really, really need them, we need Ant and Dec and the scientists, the last people on Earth, because they need to maintain the machines for the Empire, as long as they've got some scientists, some intelligent people, but they all need to be watched, observed by cameras all the time, make sure they're not plotting against, the Empire, because they're the intelligent ones who can actually run the machines. This is it, it's. I'm not saying that I'm 100% right, but generally, that is the general way that it's been going. And what can you do about it? I don't know.